13 weird skeletons found. Number 13. Hidden over 1,000 years ago with wooden, false heads, dozens of mummies were unearthed in an enormous Peruvian tomb. This monument was enclosed by a circle of baby skeletons in fetal position. The tomb may have been a final resting place for the ill pilgrims that came to Pachacamac for miracle cures from the mysterious Ixma people of ancient Peru. While some may have died naturally, researchers who have studied the ancient site can't rule out the likelihood that the babies were sacrificed. Number 12. Historically, in some cultures, the femurs and skulls of the deceased were used by their kin to make tools like buttons and combs by members of a pre-Aztec civilization in Mexico. Researchers examined 5,000 different bone fragments found in the ancient city of Teotihuacan and concluded that they had been altered into household tools very shortly after death. After their loved ones had passed, the Teotihuacans used stones to eliminate their muscle and flesh by immediately beginning to work on their bones. As time would pass, the more fragile the bones became, making the skeletons harder to sculpt. Number 11. The Teotihuacan culture has many different interesting archaeological finds. This is a mound of primordial skulls found in an empty field that once held an enormous lake. There were 150 skulls found at this site, and it represents confirmation of the largest quantity of human sacrifice ever discovered. It is thought that the sacrifice happened approximately 1100 years ago. Researchers have yet to release photos of the heads out of reverence for the modern-day Aboriginal cultures that may have been related to the victims. Number 10. Nearly 2,000 years ago, 19 Roman soldiers died in a confined underground tunnel in Syria. Their deaths were the first ever victims of known chemical warfare that left archaeological proof of their passing. During an encounter with Persian soldiers, the Romans were confronted with a wall of putrid black smoke that turned to acid in their lungs, killing them within minutes. Number 9. People in our modern society would think that driving stakes through the hearts of suspected vampires is fiction. Bulgarian archaeologists have exhumed 2 supposed vampire corpses in an archaeological site near a monastery in Sozopol. Both of the skeletons were dated more than 800 years old, and both had been found with heavy iron rods in their chest. The practice was actually common in Bulgarian villages until the 20th century. The frightening appearance of the deceased led villagers to believe that the corpses were undead. Number 8. Peculiar elongated skulls were found in Peru and Mexico that elicited claims of aliens among conspiracy theorists, and while the reality is much more ordinary than that, it's still a fascinating find. These skulls were scientific evidence that the practice of artificial cranial deformation did occur. The ancient practice involved distorting the normal growth of a child's head by binding it with wood or cloth. The earliest instances date back to the Neanderthals, and it is still practiced in some cultures today. The purpose was probably to signify group affiliation among villages, while also demonstrating social status. Number 7. Another skeletal finding of evidence that people made tools out of skeletons was when 3 human skulls were excavated in Goes Cave in Somerset, England. As the photo suggests, the skulls were carefully and artfully worked into their shape of bowls that allowed them to drink. The skulls were dated to 14,700 years old and are currently the oldest skull cups ever discovered. Number 6. In 2009, the earliest proof of leprosy in human existence was found in a 4,000-year-old skeleton found in India. Leprosy is extremely challenging to study because the bacteria that causes it is hard to culture for research. Scientists are still attempting to discover exactly when and where it originated. Not only was this skeleton the oldest leper ever found, but it was also the first evidence of leprosy found in India. The skeletal remains help to support the notion that the disease migrated from Africa to Asia during urbanization and the continuously growing population. Number 5. 12 Neanderthal skeletal remains were found in a cave in Spain, and they were expurgated and broken. The discovery indicated that they were possibly used by other Neanderthals as a food source. There are many different markings in many different bones in all 12 individuals, including traditional cut marks to disarticulate bones and remove muscle insertions. Number 4. Northwestern Europe's peat bogs have become one of the wealthiest places to excavate ancient human remains in the world. The bog's environment preserves the bodies so perfectly that sometimes they still contain blood. Bog bodies, such as the Graubohr man, date from around 8000 BC to the early medieval period. Researchers believe that they were most likely sacrificed and died violent deaths or were executed as punishment for crimes. Number 3. Almost 100 infants were discarded like junk beneath a bathhouse in Israel in the late Roman, early Byzantine era. The remains were found in Ashkelon in 1988, and the data suggests that the children died before they reached 3 days old. The remains showed no signs of disease or skeletal malformation. While scholars theorized that the babies were all female, since girl infanticide was common during that time, tests have shown that they were a mixture of boys and girls. The reasoning behind their demise is still very much a mystery. Number 2. When archaeologists excavated 51,000-year-old skulls and found evidence that a complete and total massacre had occurred at the site, they were enthralled. The site was found in addition to another pit containing headless bodies in Weymouth, UK in 2009. The archaeologists discovered that the remains were that of Scandinavian Vikings who were cruelly slain sometime between 910 and 1030 BC. They were executed by having their heads chopped off and were likely victims of Anglo-Saxons. Number 1. Can you imagine being an archaeologist and opening an ancient sarcophagus to find a mummy that looks like it was screaming for all eternity? When screaming mummies were first discovered, scientists assumed that they must have been buried alive. More recently, they have found that the corpses are commonly found with their jaws open because their heads fall back after death. The most famous screaming mummy is called Unknown Man E and was discovered in 1886 in Egypt, who consequently could be the bad son of Ramses III.